On our vacation, I got an email that caused me to gasp in sheer horror. It was an urgent email from my bank, and it said that my account had been compromised and that $1 million had been stolen from me. Just as I finished reading the email, I got a call from my mother.
What do you think about that? Maybe now you'll think twice before refusing money from your mother.
My name is Ali, and I am almost 30 years old. I work as an art dealer with my husband in New York City, which is a highly prestigious job, and it makes us a lot of money. Sometimes I have to be careful who I trust, because it is easy for people to just use me for my money. Something along these lines actually happened to me not so long ago, with the people who should have been there for me, my own parents. I will tell you the full story of how this came to be, as well as how I became so wealthy, because it wasn't always this way. Growing up, my entire family was poor. My mother and father constantly fought about money, and a lot of times they took it out on me. Of course, they never got mad at my brother, because he was their golden child. They always talked about my older brother Mark, like he was the best thing that has ever happened to them. The little money they did get went straight to gifts for Mark. I still remember the one day when I was a little girl when they came clean about why they treated me so much worse than Mark.
Eat your porridge, Ali. I don't want Mark to have to look at it for long while he eats his prime rib.
Mom, why do you treat me so badly while being so nice to Mark?
It's because we are poor, and we know Mark as a boy has what it takes to one day support this family and bring us out of poverty.
I can do that too.
No, you can't. You're stupid and you'll never amount to much.
After that day, I had very low self-esteem. It wasn't until I met my husband Raymond when I started to feel confident again. We met at a bar just outside of my little town, shortly after I had graduated high school. He was tall, handsome, and was from the big city. He asked me out on a date the night we met, and I immediately accepted. On our first date, we did something completely insane, which would set the tone for the rest of our relationship. We went skydiving. Something like skydiving was something I never thought I would be able to do, because I was poor, but apparently Raymond came from money, and he was able to take me out on the most awesome and thrilling dates. We continued to date for months, but things got weird when Raymond finally met my mom. I was already worried about Raymond meeting my mom, because he was used to the finer things in life, and my house was basically a hut to him. Luckily, Raymond was an awesome man, and loved me for me and didn't care what my house looked like. When we knocked on the door, my mother answered and immediately made a comment about how my clothes made me look like a prostitute, which was completely embarrassing. My father shook Raymond's hand, but seemed to be weary of him at first. We went inside and sat down on the couch so they could get to know Raymond.
So Raymond, what do you do?
Well, I work for my father's art dealing company. His great-grandfather founded it in 1809. Well, that's impressive. Where do you live? I live in New York City in a huge penthouse. See, I come from money, as my grandfather was a billionaire who owned one of the earliest computer companies.
When they heard that, their attitude completely changed, and they suddenly loved Raymond. Later that day, Raymond and I were hanging out at his house when I got a call from my mother. She started yelling at me and saying that I didn't deserve a guy like Raymond and that he should be with a good woman like her. I was appalled to hear something like this. Never did I think that my own mother would be jealous of my boyfriend. I kept what my mother had said a secret from Raymond, out of pure embarrassment. Luckily, things only got better between us because later that same week, Raymond asked me to marry him. The wedding was straight out of a fairy tale, and his family paid for the whole thing. Although my family did attend, my mother glared at me the whole time, and I even saw her gawking at Raymond at one point, which made me totally uncomfortable. My brother Mark even showed up, who I hadn't seen in months, but I was surprised when he ran up to me with tears in his eyes and told me he needed to talk. He told me how the pressure from mom and dad led him to experiment with drugs, and that he has been unable to keep a job for some time. I comforted him and told him I would always be there for him if he needed help, and even wrote him a check so he would be able to keep up with rent for a few weeks while he got back on his feet. My mother saw our exchange from across the wedding venue, and her eyes lit up when she saw my checkbook. She knew that now that I was married to Raymond, I would have access to his money.
Ali, sweetie, do you think you could spare me and your father some money?
This isn't really my money to be giving out. I only gave some to Mark because he really needed it.
What good are you if you can't even give your old mother some money?
When she said this, I ran away crying, and Raymond ran to comfort me. He assured that everything will be all right, and we hurried away to our honeymoon. On our honeymoon, Raymond gave me some amazing news. He said that a position had just opened up at his family's art dealing company, and he wanted me to take it. On my first day of work, I did amazing and knew I had found my new passion. In only a couple of weeks, I had made close to $1.5 million, all by myself. I was so proud of myself for making so much money on my own, especially after my mother had said I would amount to nothing. Me and Raymond decided we had done so good, we could treat ourselves to another vacation. We packed our bags and headed to Hawaii. On our vacation, I got an email that caused me to gasp in sheer horror. It was an urgent email from my bank, and it said that my account had been compromised and that $1 million had been stolen from me. Just as I finished reading the email, I got a call from my mother.
What do you think about that? Maybe now you'll think twice before refusing money from your mother.
When I realized my mother had been the one to steal my money, I quickly grabbed Raymond's phone and began recording what she was saying. I egged her on to get her to confess her evil deed. "What did you do? You stole my money?"
You're absolutely right. I stole your money, and you're not getting it back. I deserve this money for raising you.
After I had what I needed, I explained my whole situation to Raymond and showed him my mother's recorded confession. Luckily, since Raymond was rich, he had connections to the best lawyers and direct relationships with the police department in New York City. We quickly flew home and reported my mother's deeds. We watched on the news as we saw my mother being hauled to jail, but I couldn't help but feel a little bit bad. My money was returned, and I began to cry thinking about how I sent my mother to prison over money. Raymond got mad that I was defending my mother and confessed that he knew she was jealous of him and that it made him really uncomfortable. I apologized for all my mother had put us through, but explained that she was still my mother, and I had to go talk to her. I decided to go visit her in prison. "I'm sorry, Mom, but you needed to learn a lesson."
I didn't learn anything, and I'm getting out of here real soon.
Wait, what do you mean?
Remember that money you gave your brother? He's going to use it to bail me out, and that is why he is my favorite child. He's on his way to the bank right now to cash your check.
I was filled with rage. I felt so betrayed by my brother. I guess he had been lying about his addiction all along. Right away, I knew what to do to stop him. I called my bank and canceled my account just in the nick of time, and explained that if a man came in to cash a check, it was a scam. When my brother arrived to cash my check, he was arrested for attempted fraud and immediately sent to prison. I saw in the newspaper that both him and my mother were sentenced to 15 years each, both on the same day. I also heard through the grapevine that my father was left to pay all of the debts my mother had been racking up, and he divorced her because of it. Still, I feel bad for what happened to them both, but it serves them right for trying to steal what was rightfully mine. Do you agree?